Hello and welcome back to Planet 40k. Today's topic is coming from the Space Marine Codex and we're going to be looking into the Suppressor squad. So one of your fast attack options from your detachment. These guys are pretty much a Primaris assault squad that are a bit more shooty. Now if you do want to take a unit of these guys, it's going to cost you 5 power level for a unit of 3 models. Or 100 points in total for these guys. Once divided up, it's going to cost you about 33.3 points per man. Although they do give you the points as a total, as there's no option to actually add more models to the unit, so 3 is the limit. So let's take a look at their keywords to begin the review. So they can go into any chapter. They've got the smokescreen keyword, they're a core unit, they're Primaris, they've got a jump pack, they're infantry, and they can fly. So get another core unit within the books. So many of these marine units are core now and such a helpful bonus as well when synergizing your army together on the tabletop. Some of those other keywords will interact with stratagems and we'll touch upon those later in the video. As for the datasheet stats, you've got movement of 12 inch, weapon skill 3+, ballistic skill 3+, strength 4, toughness 4, wounds 2, attacks 2, leadership 7 and a 3+ save. So the sergeant's going to get an extra attack and an extra point of leadership, bringing the overall leadership up to a value of 8 while he's alive. The stats are pretty average to any of your standard marine units, except of course these guys can move 12 inch. As far as abilities go, Angels of Death, now the only thing you're going to be using here is the shock assault, which you don't really want to be fighting in combat with these guys, and of course the combat doctrine, which will apply to your heavy weapon, which we'll go over in a moment. They do also have the Death from Above ability, which is a Space Marine version of Deep Strike. Then finally they've got Suppressing Fire, so if you're firing your main weapon against an enemy infantry unit, then that unit cannot fire Overwatch for this turn. So I'm not sure if I'm that bothered about this one if I'm honest. I mean, against factions such as Tau it is going to be great as they do Overwatch without using any stratagems. A few other factions also have ways of firing Overwatch on a 5+, but overall most factions need to pay a CP to Overwatch and it'll be hitting on 6s too. So it's not that often you see Overwatch nowadays, as generally, like I said, hitting on 6s is not that reliable unless you've got a lot of shots coming in or you're auto hitting. So maybe against certain units that carry a lot of flamers such as Burner Boys, or units with a lot of DACA such as the Aggressor Squad with those gauntlets. Now it can be useful, but it is very situational. I suppose it could be used to ensure that your opponent doesn't have the option of throwing a command point at chancing a pop shot roll and killing somebody in Overwatch. So it's more of a security blanket for your charging unit. So that's the abilities. Next we're going to discuss the weapon loadout. So they come with a bolt pistol, frag and crack grenades, all the standard stuff. I'm going to put that on the screen for you now. You're not going to really use your grenades, and the bolt pistols are only going to be used in combat, which isn't really where you want to be with these guys. As for their main weapon, it's an accelerator autocannon. Its range is 48 inch, it's heavy 3, strength 7, -1 AP and the damage is 2. So it's a bit of an oddball combination, putting a heavy weapon on a fast infantry unit. I mean, as soon as they move a single inch, you're going to be taking a -1 to hit penalty while firing. Now there's plenty of ways to solve the issue as they are a core unit, but it's still a bit of a weird one for me. What makes it even more weirder is the fact that the weapon is a 48 inch range, so with that range and the heaviness of the weapon, it's going to make you want to dig in and just stay stationary while firing all game. So I'm already thinking, why not just get a Devastator unit or another heavy option that the Marines have at their disposal. Putting that aside, strength 7 is hurting most things, but that -1 AP and 2 damage doesn't really match. Now I play Necrons and there's a unit there that has a similar issue called the Locust Heavy Destroyer. One of their weapon loadouts is a strength 7 weapon. It's got a poor AP and the damage is actually 1. And it just sends me mixed messages as to who I'm meant to be firing at. Strength 7 is overkill even against Death Guard units, but the damage being 2 isn't going to be taking vehicles off the board. So let's run some maths anyway, but at a glance I'm not that impressed. So a unit of 3 of these is going to give you a total of 9 shots, and if they don't move they'll be hitting on 3s, resulting in about 6 hits on average. From those 6 hits, if you're targeting regular toughness 4 infantry, then you're going to wound approximately 4 times, and against standard 3+ armor saves, turning them into a 4+ save with the AP of the weapon, 2 of those will go through, killing 2 Primaris Marines per shooting phase, or 4 Orc Boys with no save. So it is a bit so-so. If you're firing at a toughness 7 vehicle, then you're going to wound on 4s, resulting in an average of 3 wounds being scored. And again, with averages, 1.5 of those wounds are going to be unsaved, so you're only doing an average total of 3 damage to that vehicle. Now in the Devastator doctrine, which is turn 1, they will have an extra -1 AP added to the weapon. Although if they are deep striking in on turn 2 onwards, then they will be missing that doctrine completely. So again, I'm a bit baffled by that weapon. Now I get that it's only a 3-man unit, but the weapon seems to be caught in no man's land as it's trying to do everything, but it's not actually achieving what it's set out to achieve. So let's look at some other parts of the codex then, starting off with the stratagems. The few I'd select for this unit are Hammer of Wrath for 1 CP. So this actually goes against everything I've said because it involves charging, but if you are backed into a corner and need to charge, and it may help, you get to roll a dice for each one of your models, and any dice test result that is equal to or exceeds the unit's toughness, you will score a mortal wound on that unit. So you have got a chance of getting up to 3 mortal wounds with a 3-man unit. Uncompromising fire for 2 CP lets your unit do their actions while still firing the ranged weapons. So this is obviously good for your secondary objectives. Steady advance for 2 CP lets your unit be considered to have remained stationary even when they've moved. So this will remove the heavy weapon nerf. However, this is only a 3-man unit, so it's quite a pricey stratagem at 2 CP for a 3-man unit. Adaptive strategy for 2 CP lets you turn on all the doctrines for a unit as long as your warlord is alive on the battle. Again, quite pricey for a 3-man unit. Then you've got Smokescreen, which affects an enemy ranged weapons targeting your unit, giving them a -1 to hit modifier. Now, if you did have a Psycho in the battle, casting Psychic Fortress on them will give them a 5+ invuln save, although I feel there's probably better units within your list that would benefit more from this. Captains and Lieutenants will buff your guys, giving rerolls of 1s to hit and to wound. The Captain in particular helps because if you're moving and then firing the heavy weapon, it's obviously going to give you those rerolls of 1s. But then you created another issue here because now your Captain's going to need to keep up with your 12-inch movement, so unless he's got a jump pack or he's on a bike, he's going to struggle. Litter needs help, again due to the core keyword, so I'm mainly looking at the Catechism of Fire, giving a +1 to the wound roll of your ranged weapon, so likely going to be wounded on 2s with that. They've also got the Recitation of Focus, which will add 1 to their attacks hits roll. Other than that, there's not much else to add with unit synergy. I mean, Apothecaries do what Apothecaries do best, keeping your guys alive as their core. Again, I think I'd be selecting a more important unit within the battle. I will look at some chapters for you. So Dark Angels have Grim Resolve. So remaining stationary will allow you to hit on 2s, which does do a lot for them. Their doctrine is Relentless Hunt, which gives them a 6-inch extra range to their weapons. You probably won't need it, but it can help. Just bear in mind that this supplement is due to come out anytime now, so those detachment buffs may slightly change. Imperial Fists have Siege Masters, which removes light cover, so you'll keep your -1 AP at least. Their doctrine is Legacy of Dawn, which is actually really useful because it will add an additional damage if you fire against vehicles or buildings. So if you're going against those vehicles in particular, you'll be doing 3 damage a pop. Ultramarines have their Codex discipline, which allows the unit to fall back and shoot. Now this is actually quite good because you can only have a max of -1 AP to your hit roll. So moving with the heavy weapon, you've already incurred a -1 penalty there, and that's going to be capped. So you can get yourself out of combat and fire with your heavy weapon as normal, really. Their doctrine, Signs of Guilliman, which is used in the tactical doctrine. It allows you to move and fire as if you've remained stationary. Again, this works really well with your heavy weapon. Raven Guard have Shadow Masters, which give a light cover to your unit if you're targeted from 18 inches away, and also if you are within terrain and targeted from more than 12 inches away, then you will gain dense cover as well. So now if you have managed to put them on top of, say, a building in your deployment zone, then you can expect to receive a 2+ armor save, and enemy units will have a -1 penalty to hit your unit for the majority of the game. I'm going to add the Death Watch into this section. I know a few of you do play Death Watch and you've been waiting for some Death Watch related stuff, so I always see that anti-Xenos ability and think it's not really going to apply to the meta, but they do get to reroll 1s to wound against a selected battlefield roll that's determined after deployment. They've also got Mission Tactics, which is like combat doctrines, but you get to select the turns in which each doctrine is active. So you could put the Devastator doctrine in turn 3, for example, so you could still deep strike in and not miss out on that doctrine, for instance. And as always, all of these supplements have their own stratagems, relics and other warlord traits and abilities within their book, so I'll just urge you to go in there and see what you can find. So going into their summary, I'll start with the good points first. So it's a quick unit that scores just like any other unit in the game. It does have the option of deep strike, although I'd probably not use it if I'm honest. I'd rather be firing from turn 1 without a -1 to hit penalty, and I'd at least get the doctrine active on turn 1 and 2. They are a core unit as well, so they're easily synergizing with a lot of characters and abilities within the book. Now the way I'd use these guys is to find the highest point on the board, maybe a tall building or a ruin of some sort. Get them there as early as possible, preferably one in your own deployment zone so you start on it. Then I'd be shooting there without moving and without pretty much any threat of being charged by enemy deep strike or alpha strike units. Then once the dust settles around mid game and the battle starts to take shape, I'd make a decision on whether to stay up there as a ranged support, or I'd start to use them to hop onto point scoring objectives such as your primaries if you don't have units on them. They need to be used as a support rather than a main threat. Usually I like to use the fast attack options to jump onto objectives that aren't in my half of the board, but these guys can't really defend themselves that well, and there's only 3 of them with 2 wounds apiece. No invuln saves either. So that's the good. Now for the bad and the ugly. So I can't get my head around the fact that they're a fast infantry unit with a heavy weapon that's 48-inch range. I mean, do they want us to move or not? I'm still pretty confused with that. The weapon itself makes no sense either. Strength 7 is only good if it has a solid amount of damage or the unit size is large enough to get the damage to add up. This has neither. Yet it is too strong for an anti-infantry. I mean, it will do the job. It'll wound a Plague Marine on 3s, but but did it need to be a strength 7 to do that? I can't help but feel part of the 33.3 points a model is a bit of a tax incorporated into their strength 7 weapon that quite frankly isn't needed. The third issue I have, I've just mentioned, 33.3 points a man. I mean, Terminators are that sort of cost with more wounds and an invuln save. Granted that they are slower, but they do have deep strike as well. The fourth issue is the role they have. It's a bit more of a luxury role, like you've already got your Devastators, your tanks and other long range units that fulfill a long range attack role. So having the extra support from range is just a luxury to me. Now maybe for a bigger game where your heavy support slots are full and you want the extra firepower, then fair enough, but in a small to average game, I don't see the need to field them. As for rating, I'm going to be giving the Suppressors a Planet 40k rating of 2 out of 5. Yes, they do have their uses, but comparing them to other units within the book itself, they aren't up to scratch. Now, of course, with certain chapters, they do work quite well, like Dark Angels letting them hit on 2s, which will make a fair difference compared to the vanilla Marines. Anyway, let me know your thoughts below. Am I being a bit too harsh here, or maybe it's too generous? Let me know below. So guys and girls, don't forget to check out our Patreon service for those early access videos and polls and all that other good 40k related stuff. It massively helps in funding the channel, so take a look at that if you can. You can find us on both Twitter and Instagram, to where at some point in 2021 we are going to begin doing giveaways to our followers and patrons. So give us a follow on both of those to keep on top of that. Also, don't forget to subscribe to the channel if you are new. Then finally, remember to like the video on the way out. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.